Let's open in a word of prayer. Lord, thank you so much for this day. We pray that you'll bless our time together. Pray that you will help us to always keep in mind that we are people who have the truth and that we should be willing to share that truth and the gospel of Jesus Christ with those around us. We pray that you'll give us those opportunities so that we can help the world to understand what certainly appears to be the nature of the times that we live in. That is a very significant time in human and biblical history and prophetic history. So I pray you'll bless our time together today. In Jesus' name, amen. So today I'm going to call this narrative of lies, and I think you probably know where I'm going to be referring to, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So these are some of the YouTube video channels that we're on. I'm making some progress in improving my little home studio. I have a wire on my mic. It keeps popping out, and somebody got me some things to replace that, and I appreciate that. And I did get that the other day, so hopefully going forward, I'll have that so I don't go silent in the middle of my talk if I do it at home, which I guess some people consider that a blessing in and of itself. So, anyway, so I was pretty busy this week, and hang on a second here. I seem to be getting a click. So I don't know how long this will be. I have some meetings this afternoon that I have to take care of, so I'm trying to get out of here in a reasonable time, and everybody will say, ha, 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 and you don't know what that is, but I'm trying. So these are just some of the images that I use of things that happened in past history that may repeat themselves in the future. And I think we'll see. I have some things I want to talk to you about the imagery from the other night, because I think that that's pretty significant. So it's a convergence. It's accelerating. Again, this is my little sort of how Bible prophecy is. It's pretty complex. I did a couple interviews with my friend Tom Hughes this week. We talked about Babylon and this Hashemite kingdom of Palestine plan that I've talked about a little bit. And I think I said in one of those little discussions with Tom, I've seen statistics that they say there are 44,000 Christian denominations. Now, I don't know how they came up with that. I've kind of been around the church. I've been around the church all my life. My father was a pastor. We lived in the parsonage, and the church was like an extension of the family home almost. By the way, I used to hate, they would go over there. John, would you go over and get such and such from the kitchen in the basement? And it was this old church, and it creaked, and so I'm like 6 years old, so I had got it, so there was like a half flight of stairs, and I could go up there in 3 leaps out the door, and I could be around the corner when I could hear the church, when I could hear the door close, because it just, I don't know, there was something in there, I was pretty sure. Didn't know what it was. But it was almost like that, some of those scenes on Home Alone. So I've been around the church, and I see these statistics. There are 44,000 denominations. I don't know. I don't see that many. I think that statistic is way overblown. However, my observation is this, that if you made a denomination up of people's eschatological views, 44,000 number would be way low. Because I have friends that devote their life study to this, and we all kind of disagree. So I really would encourage people that you can be strong in your views, and you can argue your views, and you can defend them, but it's very complex. And I can tell you right now that if it is a prophetic event, it is something that has not yet happened. So it's not a fact yet. the fact of the matter is these scriptures will be fulfilled, but sometimes we just don't know exactly. So I kind of liken it to the symphony. I was kind of playing around with Beethoven's Ninth Symphony about how you would have all the different parts and orchestrations, and I downloaded or found a score online of Beethoven's Ninth. And it had like, it was like all the, I don't know, how does the conductor do this? Because it's like all these different parts and sitting in front of him. And then when you look at Bible prophecy, it's kind of layered. It's three-dimensional. But the amazing thing is, like in a symphony, it sounds unbelievable. I saw somebody on Facebook this morning, they posted they had a book about Beethoven, and they said that even though he was dead, he was a great composer. And I think it was a typo. And I made my comment, I'm sure you've heard this, that they exhumed Beethoven one time, and they found him decomposing. So, anyway, this is John Haller's ACLU, Acceleration, Convergence, Logistics, and Understanding. And the fact is that we're going to get to this point in time where things are going to make more sense than they do right now. So I want to go to Revelation chapter 6. And I didn't have time to put this into my slides, so I'm just going to read it. We're going to read the whole chapter. In Revelation, look, it's a very complex book. And believe me, I know all the different views. I've studied them. In fact, one of the things that would be very good for you to do is, this is a lawyer exercise, okay? This is what we do. When we put a case together to learn how to present our case, sometimes we learn to present the most effective case on the opposite side. And it's a very good exercise. And so we're dealing with things that have not happened yet, okay? And we can disagree agreeably, but I think it would be good, to learn how to present the other side accurately as to what they present. Because I see a lot of debunking this and debunking that, and a lot of times people don't understand or accurately represent the other side's views. And that's problematic to me. So, and in fact, I'm way off track here, but now so you see, there's no way he's getting done early today. As part of my trial lawyer career, I took 2 or 3 acting classes from actually literally Hollywood actors. And it was very helpful. And I had a very, very complex case. Very complex case. So I got up and I had to, you could choose whatever you wanted to, a closing argument, an opening argument. So I decided I will do 15-minute opening argument of my case. And so I did. And I finished, and Kathy, the actress coach, she said, "John, that was the oratory, the talk, it was just," I think she's pulling my leg, but it was just fantastic. But I just have one criticism. You are dead from here down. She said, "So now I want you to do your opening statement in pantomime." And you know what? I had like an epiphany, and it was a fraud case where things were hidden, and so I was hiding things in my pocket, and it was a very effective way. So sometimes, like I say, you need to learn the other sides, the other people's positions. And sometimes when you do that, you kind of think, maybe they're not as nuts as I thought they were. Okay? Always trying to drive for the truth, though, because there is one that will be, it's going to happen a certain way. This is an example I have not used for a very long time, to talk about how exponential acceleration happens. Some of you might remember this. I think I used this verse about 6-7 years ago. This is Yankee Stadium. And as someone who grew up near Cleveland, this was like the evil empire. You know, the Indians did not like, and I'm going to call them the Indians. I don't care. What are they, the Guardians now or something? So how long would it take you to fill Yankee Stadium? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an eyedropper with a drop of water. And each minute, and so we're going to seal it up so it's watertight, and you're going to put a drop of water by second base. Every minute, you're going to double that. So at minute 1, you do 1 drop. At minute 2, you do 2 drops. At minute 3, you do 4 drops, then 8, 16, et cetera, et cetera. And so the question is, how long does it take to fill up Yankee Stadium with water? Do you know what the answer is? Less than 50 minutes. And I know I use this example. I saw it on a financial site where they were trying to show you how debt and interest and things can go exponential. Less than 50 minutes. And the interesting thing, so let's say it's 49 minutes, that's when it fills up. At 48 minutes, though, it's only half full. And a minute before that, it was a quarter full. So you see how this, and this is somewhat similar to how this Bible prophecy thing is going to go. There's going to be this like explosion. And what will seem like 50 minutes and the flood and tsunami is of all this stuff being fulfilled is here. That's my point. So let's look at Revelation chapter 6. Here it is. Okay. Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a white horse. He who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. It kind of sounds like that extends out over a period of time, right? When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Come and see." Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword. And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." When he opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living creature saying, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over 1/4 of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger and with death, and by the beast of the earth. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And this is I always find this a very interesting passage. So here are these martyrs, and they've been slain, and they're under the throne. And so what do? And they cried with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth?" I just find that interesting that that's what they're saying. And I know that that's what they're saying because this is what John wrote, and John wrote accurately. Verse 11, "Then a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them that they should rest a little while until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who would be killed as they were was completed." So there's like a number of martyrs. And here it's saying, wait a while till your number is complete. Now, what are the implications of that? We'll get around to that. Not today, but eventually. But think about it. You understand, it takes time and there's like a number, a complete number. I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. And the stars of heaven fell to earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man hid themselves in the caves and in the mountains of the rocks, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? And that's this, by the way. There's like so many layers and stuff to unpack in this, and we're not going to do that today. But understand that we live at this time where we're seeing a lot of these things happen very quickly. So let me get this out of the way first. I'm playing no clips of this piece of garbage. This was, without a doubt, the most demagogic, evil, and horrible speech an American president has ever given in the history of the United States. And when I used the title Narrative of Lies, that's what was in my mind when I came up with the title. The demagoguery, I'm not even really going to quote from the speech much, except in an article that I'm going to share with you. But imagery means something. You have to understand, and I know you, most of you do, virtually all of you do, that we are living in a time where there is a narrative that is being built, and it is based on lies. And everything that this demented old man read, I don't know that he composed this thing. They're already trying to walk it back. Well, he didn't really mean it that way. Why would you take it that way? Because that's what he said. And we have lived here over the last, I think it's probably started, I don't have my slides with me. I know I've talked about it. They put out a bulletin about dangerous extremists and white supremacists. And the imagery they used in that was imagery, at least in the tweets, that Department of Homeland Security, when they came out with this, they used imagery from a report on Muslim terrorists. It was plane flying into the building, and it was people checking in at the airport and that type of thing. And the clear, you understand, the narrative was, and anybody who's like this is like a Muslim terrorist. That's the narrative. It hasn't changed a bit. It's gotten worse since this guy came into office. Here's a little fact. He's got almost 2.5 years to go. He or whoever's running the show. I have my personal opinions, and you know what those are. Some of the people I saw on conservative, they're talking like, it looks like a Chinese pagoda. So I'm going to talk about the imagery first, but I wanted to share, I just ran across this this morning, an article at the Jewish News Syndicate by Ruthie Bloom. Okay, now where did it go? Hang on. She writes, she's, I think, the sort of pretty much conservative columnist for the Jerusalem Post. She writes, she has the spot that Caroline Glick used to have on the back page on Friday. And she has this, I'll just read a few paragraphs from here. Joe Biden's 4D speech. Taking a page from the Israel Bashers playbook, the U.S. president added disingenuousness to his demonization, imposing of double standards and delegitimization of Republicans, the 3Ds that Nathan Sharansky proposed as proof of anti-Semitism. In the fall of 2004 issue of the Jewish Political Studies Review, published by the Jerusalem Center of Public Affairs, great website, you ought to go check it out regularly, JCPOA. Nathan Sharansky outlined what he calls the new anti-Semitism, a resurgence in democratic countries of Jew hatred aimed at the state of Israel. And I see this a lot. I mean, I run across a lot of things. And sometimes I run across this on pages that claim to be Christian. And the things that are said and the propagation of lies, it's unbelievable. Now look, there are bad people in every ethnic category, evil people, okay? But there's something different about the Jews. It's off the charts. And Olivier Melnick's been here a few times to talk about that. In his piece, the author of Fear No Evil and the Case for Democracy presented a 3D test, demonization, double standards, and delegitimization, that he had devised to distinguish this worrisome phenomenon from acceptable criticism of Israeli policies. Little did he know at that time, nearly 2 decades later, the word new could be removed from the description. Indeed, the dastardly triplet not only continues to be applied to the Jewish state by its sworn enemies, but has become mainstream even in the halls of power in Washington. She's right. Let's be honest about this. Rather than being eradicated through the exposure, however, the 3D vilification technique has proven so effective that the left began to adapt it to discredit any figure or movement that doesn't toe its line. The practice is especially blatant during political campaigns, such as the one being conducted in Israel ahead of the November 1st Knesset elections and those surrounding the midterms of the U.S. Congress. And this is right. But here, a fourth D can be added to the arsenal, disingenuousness. As is the case with the new old anti-Semites who pretend only to be targeting certain policies, the above detractors claim merely to be protesting against a particular politician. When the press secretary was questioned about this, who is he after? Does he mean everybody who voted? Oh, no, it's only, go look it up, only the people who disagree with us. My friends, this is dangerous. Don't take the bait. They're trying to bait a violent reaction. Don't take it. You know, my view, protest against it if you want, and crush them at the ballot box. And maybe it'll work. I don't think it's ever going back to anything resembling what we would have considered normal a few years ago. It's just not going to happen. There's only one savior on the agenda coming, ultimately, and that's Jesus. And we need to be looking for that. But in the meantime, we have things to do and people to protect and that type of thing. So I think we need to be involved. Nothing better illustrates this demonization, imposing of a double standards, delegitimization, and disingenuous than U.S. President Joe Biden's primetime speech to the nation on Thursday in front of Philadelphia's Independence Hall. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threaten the very foundations of our republic. Yeah, they want to go out and vote you out of office. It is hard for me to conceive of a more evil, divisive speech by the man who claims to be the great uniter. This was vile, it was evil, it was full of lies. And that's the narrative. Now, who's the father of lies? Now, look, Joe Biden thinks he and his people, they're building this great, beautiful, wonderful society. How's that going? But we understand, and look, I'm going to say this too. There are people on the right that you need to be as concerned about as this. Because there's some, especially back in the Q days, I researched one lady, somebody sent me a video, you need to watch this lady, it's so wonderful. And she was saying, there are all these indictments and all these bad people are going to be indicted. Now, I started debunking that thing when it was 3,000 sealed indictments. And I haven't checked recently. It's like 1 million. It's not possible. You'd have every person in the federal government turned into a prosecutor, and you wouldn't have 1 million indictments in this period of time. It's just not, it doesn't happen. Stop believing this nonsense. But then I watched further into the video. And the lady was talking, we're going to build this fifth dimension and new age of light and transformation. And it was like, and somebody would watch it and say, the Lord told me that she was really speaking truth. And I would say, no, the Lord should be telling you that she's a nut. That's what I'm hearing. And it's dangerous. So, got to be careful, both sides of this issue. So on back to Ruthie Bloom's article. He went on, now I want to be very clear, not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are mega Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. You notice he never defines it. I know because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans, but there is no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the mega Republicans, and that is a threat to this country. They do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They are determined to take this country backwards. To have an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry whom you love. Ruthie Bloom says, seriously? It is though an apt depiction of a very different republic, the Islamic one run by killer mullahs to whom this administration is desperate to hand over billions of dollars, maybe as much as $1 trillion over the next 6 or 7 years, for atom bomb building, and enhanced global terrorism. Still, it is MAGA who is the threat to American democracy that he bemoaned, while assuring that the United States is not powerless in the face of this threat. So that's the imagery. A number of years ago, I did a talk. I've used this a number of times. You can probably look up my name at Pergamum on the internet. And there's a church of Pergamum, that's identified in Revelation, the 7 churches in Revelation 2 and 3. And Pergamum is where Satan's throne is. Remember that phrase? And it's kind of interesting because this is a guide. This is wonderful. I mean, this thing's like 8 or 10 years old. I downloaded from the internet. You can see the Pergamon secondpage.de. I think you can find it on YouTube still today. And this is a recreation of the Acropolis at Pergamon. And I won't go into it, but you see all of these temples. You see one here, and like one's to this Roman emperor and then others to another Roman emperor. But this one here in the lower right corner now, as we're coming in on, was the altar that was built to Zeus at Pergamum in Turkey. Very interesting imagery. It has kind of, my view, I hope to go there someday, but it has kind of a creepy feel to it. It's pagan. It's satanic. There's just no question about this. Some of these emperors that have temples up there, they were persecuting and martyring Christians. Here's a sort of a view of this Pergamum altar. Here's what it looks like today. You can see parts of it. Somebody photoshopped in what it would have looked like at the time, but it's not there anymore. They've taken it and they moved it to a museum in Berlin, Germany called the Pergamum Museum. Kind of interesting. A museum must be about Pergamum. And it is. Now, this thing has been was closed for, 6 or 7 years here recently while they refurbished it. And one of the main things in one of the galleries is the Zeus altar, that they've taken part of the original and recreated it there. And it used, I don't know if you still can, used to be able to go up there and sit on it and that type of thing. And it's been there for a long time. It was there back in the 1930s. And it was there in the 1930s that a young German architect named Albert Speer went to the Pergamon Museum. And he liked that building, that made an impression on him. He later became the chief architect for a guy named Adolf Hitler. And at Nuremberg, they built the reviewing grounds for the Nazis. And it looked like this. Do you see how the imagery is conveying this message and power? This is what it looked like. It was eventually bombed. I think this, there used to be a big medallion up there on the top in the middle, and it was bombed by the Allies when they took this over. Here's a picture of this. You see the emblem up there? And this is a picture of one of the famous rallies that took place there. I mean, there would be 1 million people in the reviewing grounds. And the imagery is, do you understand the imagery? That you see the military guys standing behind the podium? Do you understand what we just had happen in Philadelphia? At a place in our civic culture is kind of sacred space. I don't know how else to describe it. 2 great documents drafted there, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And this man went there and did this. Here's a night rally at Nuremberg. Now, that same kind of imagery was taken and used by a former president at one of his acceptance speeches. This was in Denver at Malhi Stadium. Do you see the imagery? I'm trying to convey to you an issue. And I would be bipartisan in my criticism of this. I do not like this. This conveys something very underhanded, evil, whatever you want to use to describe it. Look at this imagery. This is an article about Steve Bannon wants to summon an army of Christian nationalists. And so I watched MSNBC the morning after the speech. And Joe Scarborough and all these guys, this was the most wonderful presidential speech of all time. We live on different planets. No, we don't. We live in different universes. I saw somebody in a comment someplace, I grew up like next door to Joe Scarborough. What happened to him? I don't know. So just understand, this is, you have to understand the nature of the world that we live in. This is coming. I don't know where it stops. I know Jesus comes back. I know that one I've got nailed down for sure. And I'm still working out exactly how all that comes together. As all of us are and should be. In a loving, kind, respectful way. Unless the person is just a complete nut. Okay, that's... But I know a lot of people with a lot of different views. They're my brothers. I love to discuss, even debate, argue about these things. Because iron sharpens iron, right? And that's where we are. And so we should all be firm but humble. What's the phrase? There was one attorney. She was a phenomenal lawyer. And I sort of referred to her as the velvet hammer. Because, you would kind of get in a back and forth with her and you'd walk away and realize, I've just been beat to death by her, because she was really good. And so we should all be velvet hammers, I guess, for the Lord. But you see the imagery that they have there? Maybe the worst Photoshop in history, but it's awful. Now, so this is just the last political thing I think that I'm going to talk about, true politics. Well, maybe not. John Podesta, remember him? You probably didn't even hear this week. He was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager in 2016. Big controversy about his emails. This guy's the consummate Washington, D.C. insider. He's always around. So I don't know, domestic climate advisor, Gina McCarthy, stepped down, and he has now been appointed. And based on the recent bill, he will have $370 billion to parcel out for climate change. This is one of the scariest pieces of news that I've seen. Who is he going to enrich? What is he going to do with that money? Is anybody going to exercise oversight over what he does effectively? I'm concerned about it. And the great Kimberly Strassel has a good article in the Friday Wall Street Journal about the politicization and weaponization of the FBI and Department of Justice. You should go look it up. It's very concerning. It's particularly concerning. Well, here's what she says at the beginning of her article. The aces at the New York Times are indignant over the torrent of vitriol unleashed on federal law enforcement officials following the Mar-a-Lago raid. It's as if the press corps has memory hold the last 6 years of FBI history. And she goes on to relate people that, whistleblowers are outing, and they still have their jobs, or they go off and still have their pension. Like Lois Lerner, who slow walked and essentially shut down religious conservative 501c3s and C4s during her term as head of the IRS. And guess what happened? She lost all of her emails. She still has her pension. Nothing ever happened to her. She didn't even answer questions at Congress. Nobody filed contempt charges against her. This whole thing is corrupt. We should have known this was coming at the end times. But it's particularly troubling in light of this. This is a chart that came from the Atlantic Council, and it's a globalist organization, but they have interesting articles there. Like they have one article, I think I've referenced it before, Ukraine can feed the world. Wow. Does that have anything to do with what's going on today? And that article was written a number of years ago, before the Ukraine war. But this is the green areas are people that have pilot programs for central bank digital currencies. And then the blue, they're in the research phase, and light blue, they're in the development phase, and the yellow, they've actually launched. So a couple countries have launched central bank digital currencies, which are programmable. There are some that believe that the U.S. one will be launched in December. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case, but that's what people are saying. So pay attention about that, because they're programmable. And as we've said, the programmable part, and then when you read Revelation 13 and the control that this coming beast system has, and the implication is if it's a beast system, there's a beast, right? So, but it's coming, and this will be programmable. So if you've spent too much, if your carbon footprint is too big, I'm sorry, you look like you've gained a little weight. Your currency will not let you buy ice cream. Maybe you could go get some, that gummy, sticky, pasty, non-sugar, non-dairy stuff back there. You could probably get that. I think that would go through. you drove your electric car too far this month. So your electricity will not allow you to charge your car. Think that's not real? California says by 2035, we won't be selling gasoline cars. Only electric. Oh, guess what? This week they put in power grid shutdowns, rolling blackouts in some cases because of heat in California, and said, please don't charge your car for a while. And now I've heard rumors that Governor Newsom, the governor of California, will be the leading candidate for that party for president. So here's a little bit different chart from the central bank digital currencies. And be sure that this whole thing is tied to this. This is a graphic I used back when they had that COP26 conference in Scotland about climate change. This is from the Times of the UK, and it's kind of interesting. You see the cooling towers in the background, and you see all the private jets on the runway that everybody flew to get there. And the protesters are up here, and then there's all the big limos down there delivering people to what? The Tower of Babel. That's very interesting imagery that a secular person would pick this up. Because we know there's a Babylon that's coming. And now we'll get into a big argument about where is Babylon and this. And so I'm not dismissing any of the various views. I'm just saying it's got to be underway. I don't know that it will be finished and complete before it's destroyed. The original tower wasn't done, right? So is that a prophetic pattern for what's going to happen to the final Babylon? I think so. But we know that something's coming, and depending on your view, it's either fully built and operational, it's on its way, they have the plans, or there's a little bit happening, but not much. And if that's a critical central part of this last period of human history, then that's where I talk about the logistics. I don't think it's built overnight. So extrapolate from that. So we have all these things, and then we have all of these other things, transhumanism movement, the transgender thing, CRISPR, gene therapy, change people's DNA. They had an experiment this week. They did something with mice and DNA and changed it into something like a hybrid. I'm just saying they're doing all of this stuff. So the question is, God intervened at Babel because of the way things were going. And I think, I'll paraphrase the verse, they think they can be as God. And God intervened. And so you have Yuval Harari and other people running about, well, you believe in a God above the clouds, but we're going to be little gods in the cloud, in the technology cloud. And it's kind of weird and kind of interesting and scary and concerning. God has us. Don't forget that. And I think we're at this point where, God's like, I'm going to have to intervene. Some of it's crazy. This is a picture of a mini digger. Pam, we got to get one of these. I can't hear you. She said no. I don't know what I would use it for, but I just think it would be really fun to have. This is electric powered. So they're going to trace the cord on, well, what are they? They're recharging the battery. So how do they just plug it into the wall, right? Well, not really. We're going to go back here and look at this big, beautiful diesel generator. So I don't know if we didn't pay the light bills. The lights just went out. But anyway, or I was just too bright. But by the way, it works for 2 hours, and then you have to charge it for 8 hours to use it again. So when you hear, farmers I know have told me, John Deere wants us to change to electric tractors and harvesters, and combines. This is the technology. And the farmers go, we run those things 24/7. Have you ever seen them when they harvest corn up here in Northwest Ohio? These things are like the giant, it looks like a herd of giant locusts that sweep across. I mean, you'll drive up in the morning and you see them, and you come back down, and it's like miles of cornfields have been mown down and harvested during the day. And you'll see 12, 13 of them lined up across a field, and they just, I mean, it's like acres and acres an hour. It's an amazing thing to see, but they couldn't do that if it was all electric. It's crazy. They're closing nuclear power plants, except even California says, you know, we have one left at the Diablo Canyon. You can see it along the 5 freeway as you go down. I actually think that might be Catalina in the background in the ocean. But it's there on the coast, is between Irvine, Laguna Beach, going down towards San Diego. And they say, well, you know, maybe we're going to extend this one 5 years. Why? They need the power. But even the Atlantic Council article says, listen, they do this because there's a reason for it. It's actually kind of clean energy. It's pretty carbon neutral. Really is, and it's efficient, but nobody wants to do that. Why? Well, because the agenda is not about efficient power delivery or anything like that. This is happening in Europe, and I talked a lot about this the last few times. Europe is in a very difficult position. This is an article at Zero Hedge, and Sweden, Austria, and I think Germany have started bailing out energy companies so they can continue to provide power this winter because they're going bankrupt. Now they come in and say, we're going to put a cap on Russian oil price. Oh, but you don't own it. And you're putting a... How do you think Vladimir Putin is reacting to this? Well, he's saying, okay, yeah, I get you. I'm closing down Nord Stream indefinitely. Because he's awash in cash and money. UK officials get hands dirty as energy fears spark tests of blackout scenarios. And so they're looking like, what happens if we don't have power? This is from today's Sunday Times. Energy crisis is priced to avoid world wars, says Zelensky. Will we face winter blackouts? It depends on the British weather. I love the UK. I love England. I've only been in a small part of it, but it was fantastic. But I think one of the things you can depend on the weather there is it's just not that great a lot of the time. And so what are they going to do this winter? I mean, one day I went over to the British Museum. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was late November. It was pitch black because the sun goes down pretty early. I mean, by 3:45 p.m., it's dark because they're so far north. But how's this all going to work out? I mean, you know, people need to be preparing for this. This is a place in, I think it was in Ireland, Galway, Ireland. Got their bill. It was for a couple months, 73 days, 9,836 euros. How is this possible? We're a small coffee shop. And just pretend that the euro and the dollar are the same. They're sort of at parity now. So you have a small coffee shop and your utility bill is almost $10,000 for 2.5 months. How do you survive? It's a small coffee shop. I saw somebody else, they said, I got one. It was like 1,500 euros. I have a kiosk. I have a small like dorm refrigerator and a hot plate and sell coffee. They can't do it. Here's an article. This is a press release from a German steel manufacturer. And essentially what it says is we're shutting down our steel plants. Not a partial shutdown, not a dial back. In September, when it's still warm, we're shutting it down. We can't afford the energy. So what happens to the people who need the steel or the aluminum or whatever that's manufactured, and the people who need the jobs to pay their utility bills? And so Zero Hedge has this out. There's a guy named Zoltan who works, I think he still works for Credit Suisse. And he says, this is what the New World Order will look like after Europe's Minsky moment, where $2 trillion of German value, debt, and equity depends on $20 billion of Russian gas. In other words, translation, the Minsky moment is a guy that somebody said is you reach this point where everything collapses. It's just everything goes. And so they're suggesting in this article, Zoltan is, and with some factual basis, that if they don't get the Russian gas, this $2 trillion of value goes poof. That's in Germany, long held to be the best country in energy-wise in Europe. And then there's this thing that Macron, I guess there was one with sound. Let me shut that down. And he essentially came out and said, in the room with the gold-edged door and everything, the era of abundance is over. You're going to have to sacrifice. I just think this is kind of his Marie Antoinette moment. You serfs, let them eat bread or cake, whatever it was. So here's Germany. They're not getting the storage done. And Russia, this is Wall Street Journal, they're kind of confounding everybody like they're recapturing their oil riches. And this is a chart that shows how the price is going and demand and all this other stuff. And Europe is in big, big trouble. We could be following. Europe is a big user of energy, as you can see, Europe and Central Asia. This is from the National Post. And one article is why there is no longer an us, Canada divided as never before by pronouns. So Baby Trudeau came out this week, and there's a very funny video of him trying to recite the LGBTQIA plus minus Z, whatever they use, and he gets all fumbled up. And he just kind of says, well, you know what I mean. Well, now it's different. They've now come up with more things to tack onto the beginning. So it's 2S LGBTQIA plus. What's the 2S? Two-spirit. Remember I talked about this where they were pushing this in the California schools, this two-spirit stuff, because that's how the trans thing comes about. They're two spirits. This is satanic. By the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene, my understanding, the congresswoman from Georgia, has now been swatted like 5 times in the last week. Where somebody calls the police and says, there's an active shooter at Marjorie Taylor Greene's house. So they bring out the SWAT team. Steve Bannon got swatted the other night. This is attempted murder. This is happening in America. And I'll tell you what, go to the New York Times, go to Washington Post, go to MSNBC, and just see if you can find a story about Marjorie Taylor Greene being swatted. If you can, send it to me. I'd like to see it. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it discussed on CNN or anywhere else. I've seen it on Fox and other conservative programs. Not that every program at Fox is conservative. Conservative programs at Fox. This is another thing, too. Right now, 1/3 of Pakistan is underwater. And I meant to mention this about central bank digital currency. In Denver this week, had a heat wave, and there were thousands of customers in Colorado who went, it's hot, right? So what do you do when it's hot? Well, to get the house cooled down, you go turn the thermostat down for a little while, turn on the fans. They went to their thermostat and they saw this. Temperature locked temporarily during energy emergency. That's a smart meter. Thousands of people in Denver couldn't adjust their temperature this week because somebody was making the decision for them. Due to a rare energy emergency that may affect the local energy grid, your temperature slider has been changed from 8 p.m. to 8 p.m. because you enrolled in a community energy savings program. In other words, you got a smart meter. And in many cases, you don't have a choice, right? It's sort of like, here's your meter. Oh, you don't want it? Oh, okay, we'll take you off the grid. Oh, we can't have you off the grid. You're getting it anyway. Winter's coming, Europe is waiting. So this is a big problem. So let's just take a quick look, very quick look at the Middle East. This continues to be a thing. The Hezbollah threatening war over the demarcation line, what's going to be the border between Israel. Amos Hochstein, the U.S. representative, is supposed to be going to, I think, Israel this week or next to get this done. Hezbollah's threatening war. If you take any oil, any gas oil out of the Mediterranean, which they refer to as here it is, the quote, Israel cannot start extracting gas from any platform in the occupied Palestinian Sea, and not only from the Karish platform. So that's a threat of war. There was a lot of attacks back and forth in Israel this week. Here's something on China. This was in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. The two faces of China's surveillance state. And the article goes through it. It tells two stories. It says, whatever town this is, city this is, that used to have this second or third worst traffic in China. So they put in smart cameras to control traffic flow and, take from sensors that people had and information from phones. And so what they did was that city that was the third worst traffic in China is now 57th worst. So it was wonderful. It's improved things. Then they show a story about a lady who was collapsed by a body of water. And they went there in the ambulance. They got her. They put her in the ambulance. And this is a big emergency. And usually the trip to the hospital would take like 45 minutes. But because of the smart city thing, it took 12 minutes. And she lived. But now there's all these cities that are going. This is a story from the Financial Times or Wall Street Journal. Still having more lockdowns. There's big economic problems in China. So when you see anything about Erdogan and making nice with Israel, always remember that when Trump made the announcement about moving the embassy, within a week they had a big meeting of Muslim countries in Istanbul, and they put up that map in Yeni Sefek in December of 2017 in response. Got to be careful making these peace agreements because Turkey's very expansive. This is the picture here is kind of a graphic of Turkey's what they call blue water, Mavi Vatan, that what they really control. They have a very expansionist view of what's theirs. And they control all that wheat and oil and stuff that comes through the Bosporus and the Dardanelles, those narrow passageways there. In Turkey, you can look at these demographic things. Turkey looks pretty normal demographically. and they've got about 85 million people in 2021. When you look at China, I don't have that. You can go to populationpyramid.net if you want to see the graphic, the bell curve profile. So at the top are old people, at the bottom are young people and babies and everything. And when you get to China, that bottom part goes in pretty significantly. So what does that mean? It means China's dying. You'll kind of see the same thing with Russia, but they have a lot of Islamic immigration. And we would probably be in that boat if we didn't have a lot of immigration either, to be honest. But China lost this battle like 40 years ago. Iran's been losing this battle for a while, and it's getting worse over the last couple of years. People just don't have babies. And young people leave like crazy. And so the population thing is very skewed. And that's why you see the signs everywhere around here is we need workers. Well, part of it is there may not be any because a lot of people are retiring. Everywhere I go, there's help wanted signs. Locally, by the way, I was talking to some people in banking and stuff over the past few days. They're expecting an influx of about 80,000 workers for the Intel and other plants being built out there in New Albany. So that might help the local real estate market. It's a huge number. Maybe it's 80,000 people. I don't know. It's a huge number of people moving into Columbus, they expect. And we already have help wanted signs. So that's good for us locally. There's a few things going on in the Middle East. Of course, there's the usual conflict between between Syria, Iran, Israel. There's some bombing runs. By the way, a large portion of those silos in Beirut that were damaged a couple of years ago, early August, they collapsed. And it's hard to find information about Lebanon, but it's in terrible shape. It's utter devastation. No, very little power. Money is terrible. This is an interesting note. This is a sort of in central Syria. This was an S-300 battery a few months ago. This is what on the right is what it looks like today. The S-300 system is gone. And there are other places where the S-300 system, and it's not a small system. I mean, it's, you can see it from space. And the belief is that they're taking them from Syria to put them into Ukraine because they need them. Russia needs them. And Israel continues to make attacks into Syria. There was an Iranian military guy that was killed the other day. This is an article from, I don't have the picture that goes with it. It's on my Facebook page. This is from the Abu Dhabi Festival. Why is Abu Dhabi Festival important? Well, that's where they're building this Abraham family house, the church, the synagogue, and the mosque. And this is they're having a festival in October, and this guy and others have put together this thing called the Abrahamic Symphony, called the Unity of Three, that they're going to play at the opening of that place, the Abraham family house. So that's coming. In fact, if you look at the article here, celebrates the historic opening of the Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi, October 2022. So people have been asking when that's going to happen. There were more attacks in Syria, and this is an interesting article from Asharq al-Aswad, an Arabic newspaper out of London. And the article says, I'll just read it. Russia called on the Iranian militias to leave important military sites west of Hama and near the city of Tartus in central and western Syria to avoid the Israeli aerial bombardment, which has increased in frequency during the past few days. So Russia says, you need to get out. At the same time this is going on, Iraq is in a bit of a meltdown because of the political situation there. Sadr, the Shia Muslim cleric who got involved in politics, announced his retirement. People started to riot and that type of thing. And then the head of Hezbollah called up Sadr and said, you need to get control of the situation. So Iran's really got a lot of control in that part of the world. So there were targets. They destroyed a runway at the Aleppo airport. In fact, here's the Aleppo airport, and you see that big hole there in the runway. That was done by Israel. Everybody says Israel this week. But by the way, it's already been repaired, and the airport's back up and running. So Israel or Iran's boosting its civil defense in Iran because they expect an attack. This Iran agreement is being negotiated. Iran has sent hundreds of combat drones to Moscow for use in Ukraine, but the word is that they're not performing very well. So that's something that you might want to watch. And if you want a good article, go look at her. I won't take the time to go through it. Israel's rational and irrational Iran policies. Gantz met with Jake Sullivan in the U.S. this week at the State Department and came back and sort of said, the U.S. is preparing to attack Iran. The Biden administration, and they're entering into this ridiculous agreement. So I don't know what to believe. Caroline has a good analysis, and she also talked to a guy who used to work in the Trump administration on her podcast this week, and I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. So lots of things going on in the Middle East. It's a very volatile situation, and so I'm going to finish, except I told my moderator that I might take questions, a question or two. I suppose you people that are here, you can ask. So by the way, I try not to track the numbers because it's kind of a chasing your tail thing. But we're just like that close to 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you know people or you haven't subscribed, you could go ahead and do that. Anyway. So I don't see any questions coming in. So I'm going to quit. It's 12:17. I'm not ill. I'm not having a heart attack that I know of or anything like that. It's just I was pretty busy. Well, I did. So if you want to see on YouTube, you can go to Hope for Our Times. Both of the interviews with Tom Hughes are there. I've also put them on our YouTube channel. And then Stand Up for the Truth with David Fiorazzo. I was also on that. On Thursday. So if you want to listen to that conversation, because they all talked about different things, not much of which I talked about today. So let's pray. Difficult times are here. And people that I know that are pretty reasonable are pretty concerned about what could happen here in the United States. But this is true in other places. France, UK, they've got elections, government change, Brazil. I mean, the list is just endless. And it could be a difficult winter, but God's in control. We knew that these things something like this was coming. It might actually, something worse might be coming. But we know that, in difficult times, the church is, what's the verse in Peter talk about, being purified or magnified in his sufferings, if we suffer like him. It's the way it kind of works. So listen, don't be afraid of anything, just be faithful. So let's pray. Lord, thank you for this time we can spend together. Pray that you will watch over us and pray that you will bless our time together and give us opportunities to share the gospel with people that we run into this week and help explain things to them. Bless us this week in Jesus' name. Amen.